Okay, greetings, forensic science. I'm going to try to make this video brief because I have a class coming in well, in about 5 to 10 minutes. So, that was me checking the clock, by the way. A couple of things to know. There are some pictures, not many, but there's a couple of pictures at the end of this video that are a little bit on the creepy side. And so, if that bothers you, you're going to have a tough time for the rest of the year. So we're going to jump in onto now beyond the crime scene. So we now have gone through the whole crime scene search process. We're processing the evidence, and now what happens to it afterwards. So what happens after the crime scene is done? And so there's a couple of things we're going to talk about. First, your search must extend beyond the crime scene. Okay, this goes to if we have dead victims, to autopsies, to actually processing the evidence itself. And so here you have the medical examiner and the coroner. They're the ones who help establish the cause and the manner of death. Okay, they're very, very important in figuring that out. So how do they do that? Generally, tissues and organs are retained, and they then use a pathological and toxicological examination. Pathological meaning that they determine the cause of death, toxicology determining if there was anything in there that was drugs or poisons or anything that would have led to that death. And so, at the same time, that examiner is going to figure out a variety of items that they're going to obtain from the body for their examination. So here are some of the following things that they need. Okay, you need the victim's clothing at the time of death, fingernail scrapings, yuck, head and pubic hairs, blood. This is for DNA typing purposes, so they know whose blood is whose at a crime scene. Vaginal, anal, or oral swabs. This is specifically for a sex-related crime if there was a rape involved. Recovered bullets from the body. And hand swabs from shooting victims because, as we will learn, whenever you shoot a gun, there is a residue of powder that is on your hand. So, packaging. You need to know the different types of packaging for different types of evidence. So if I just gave you a particular type of evidence, you would be able to tell me how it is packaged. And so, depending on the location, it's going to be in different types of packages, and so this prevents damage, cross-contamination, and things like that. And so generally, okay, there's even whole vehicles that some crime units have that have all of these different types of packages in them, whole entire crime scene collection units. But generally you're going to have a lot of different tools with you. Okay. So packaging, forceps, essentially kind of tweezery types, type of little grabber there, are used to pick up small items. We will use tweezers generally in class. Okay, unbreakable plastic pill bottles are great for things like hair, glass, fibers. Okay, anything that's kind of a dry type of evidence, you can use little containers for that. You can even use your small little Tupperware containers. Things like that will keep it safe. Manila envelopes, glass vials, cardboard pillboxes, kind of the same thing I was saying. They're all good for trace evidence, just something that will contain it and keep it safe and isn't going to pop open on its own. However, you don't use a regular mailing envelope, okay? Because the way that they are actually folded, there can be tiny little holes in the corners and stuff, and so if you have something that could possibly fall out of that, you don't want that to take place. So you don't just use a regular standard mailing envelope. That is why I had you do the little video with the druggist fold, okay? Because the druggist fold, the way you do it, it doesn't have any open corners whatsoever. Okay, so if you fold it right, so if you haven't been folding it right, but if you fold it right and you really tuck it into the end, then it is safe and it is not going to fall out of that no matter what. And so, anyway, although these are good universal collectors of stuff, you can put most dry trace evidence in there. There's a couple of things that you need to know. Hint, hint. Blood. Okay, if you have blood-stained material, you just can't chunk it in a Tupperware container, because what happens is that since there's moisture in there, it starts to condense. Condensation in different temperatures can cause bacteria growth, cause mold to grow, and can ruin a perfectly good bit of evidence. And so you never put blood-stained materials in an airtight container. Also, so you would use there's a particular one that says wrapping paper. It's not like, hey, Merry Christmas, here's a blood-stained glove, okay? From my good friend OJ. Couldn't help it. It's actually, there's a particular type of paper that you use. It's almost like a kind of a craft butcher paper. You can use the manila envelopes for that, especially if you have a small amount of bloodstained materials, and also even paper evidence bags, which I don't have one on hand. I had one I pulled out for this purpose, but don't have it with me. Think of like a small brown paper bag, and it has an evidence and a chain of custody list written on it. So, as we've been talking about over and over and over again, chain of custody is a list of everyone who came into possession of an item and wherever that item was. You have to have continuity of possession, okay? And so, where you always know where evidence is, okay? If it ever goes missing, it's going to come up in court. It's not going to be able to be used. So, you need to adhere to standard procedures when you're recording the location, marking it for identification, and properly completing evidence submission forms for lab analysis. You have to do that everywhere. It can never be a part where it's unaccounted for. So every person who handled the evidence and where is that must be written down. Okay, reference samples. I'm going to do it all the time. Okay, reference samples. A standard reference sample would be physical evidence whose origin is known, such as blood or hair from a suspect that can be compared to crime scene evidence. This would be like hair samples from suspects and family members and people who are around a victim. Okay, that would be a standard reference sample, or even the crime scene investigators themselves who are on who are at a particular scene. They would also need to give a sample. The examination of evidence, whether it is soil, glass, hair fibers, often requires comparison with a known standard or reference sample. So a standard or reference sample is something where you know the origin of it, and so you can test it up against your evidence that you've collected at the scene. Now something that's similar, let's see, okay, this is not something that necessarily that people do well, okay, of collecting standard or reference samples, or even another kind of sample called a substrate, which is basically kind of like a control. Like if you had blood-soaked ground over here and you had regular dirt right next to it, you would also take a sample of the regular dirt just to make sure that when you tested it, there wasn't something about the regular dirt that was going to give you an off reading. So you need to be very careful about making sure you get reference samples as well, because sometimes people are not. Okay, a couple of special forensic services. Forensic pathology. This is the investigation of death, no matter, especially unnatural, unexplained, or violent deaths, but they also can deal with natural deaths and determining to make sure it is a natural death. And so they kind of work with medical examiners and coroners in determining that. They conduct autopsies, and I'm in the middle of a video right now, Rocky, and you're going to make me... Hey, Rocky. Hi, Rocky. Okay. Well, we're just in the middle of this awkward video. I thought I locked the door, but apparently I didn't. So, okay, forensic pathologist is going to deal with determining the cause of death. Completely lost my place now I just feel awkward. Okay, there's a picture of a dead rat. And so, a couple of things here. Stages of death you need to know about. Rigor mortis. Okay, you probably have heard the term before. This is a fun little phenomenon that happens after a body dies, basically within the first day or so, day and a half, and that is when the muscles of your body start to contract and stiffen. Okay, and so you can know if a body has been dead recently because of the fact that it would have a very stiffness to the body. And everybody's coming in now. It's all good. And so that lovely rat there obviously was put in a particular form and didn't just die sitting up. Liver mortis. That horrible looking picture that you see there is liver mortis. This would be where basically right after you die, your blood is no longer pumping through your body, and so over time it starts to settle with gravity. And so you could actually start to see the blood collecting on the part of the body that's closest to the ground, and causes the blood to start to thicken, and you get a nice darker coating on the skin, which that's what was going on there with that dude. Then you have algor mortis, which is the loss of body heat. You also need to know about that, where you can actually use the body heat of an individual to determine how long they have been dead. And couple of final things. Forensic anthropology is concerned with the identification and examination of remains. Okay, so you would obviously not call out a pathologist to get that. Don't grab one of those yet, please. And then forensic entomology, we've talked about the study of insects and their relation to it. We're not going to go into the details yet of the different types of bugs for that, but we will at some point. That said, good day.